Good morning, world. How are you? I thought I would do a little chat and sew, or sew and chat. It's another very wet and dreary day here in the north of England. The weather is just shocking. And we are forecast no summer for August. And I was complaining about this on my other channel. Ew, look at my hair. Because my crops and my garden is not going to do very well this year. Very little free food this year. Anyway, this is the sewing channel, so I'm not going to talk about gardens and plants. If you want to follow those, you can find that on my other channel, which I shall include below. The main thing I was going to mention today is, and I've already made a quick video about this, is about the news about Etsy's holding back of money has finally trickled down to British news headlines, and British Etsy store holders are up in arms about having money held back, which is not new news. I mean, it's been a thing over the pond for a while, and it has been a thing here in the UK. I've had money held back in the past, but it's finally hit the headlines. I think it's a slow news week because Etsy doesn't usually make it to the headlines. And the fury of the British sellers who are now boycotting Etsy by putting their stores on vacation mode, which I'm pretty sure Etsy doesn't give a rat's about that. I would imagine that the UK arm of Etsy isn't massive, and given the huge number of sellers who are on Etsy, I'm going to assume that a small proportion, I would imagine, of sellers who are boycotting the site isn't going to make any difference to their revenue whatsoever. And I think a lot of sellers feel that, you know, if they complain about Etsy, if they boycott them, it'll make them do things to improve the site for sellers. But it doesn't, because what you've got to remember is that Etsy is a business, and Etsy works for Etsy. It doesn't work for sellers. We are the mechanism by which Etsy makes profits. But a few sellers boycotting the site really isn't going to make a big difference to it. And this is one of the reasons that I started up my own website. What I've been able to do is allow certain categories of items in my Etsy store expire. They are for sale over on my Shopify store, which I will also link below, because sales. And I'm only keeping a very core basic number of items on Etsy. What this means is that my Etsy fees every month have gone right down and are less than it costs me per month to have my Shopify website, my Shopify store. I'm allowing all the clothing to expire on Etsy, and I think I will keep a select amount of jewellery, and I'll keep the haberdashery on Etsy, because I don't really want to sell those things in my Shopify store. I want that to be predominantly the apparel side of things. So I'm still running both stores, but in very different ways. and that's an advantage to me because it means I'm spending less money. Because with Shopify you pay per month for your site, and you can put as many listings on there as you like, and you don't have to pay to renew them. Whereas on Etsy you pay, it was 20 pence per 3 months. I don't know what it is now. Everything keeps going up, I lose track. So yeah, so that's bringing my fees down, which is great because sales are very hit and miss. I'm also selling other stuff on eBay, and I'm siphoning out a few of the vintage items that I have in my Etsy onto eBay as well, and they've sold there. It's a hard market selling on eBay as well. People want stuff for very little, and postage costs are crippling. This is one of the problems. If I sell, say, a dress and I get beaten down to £4 or £5 on a really nice pre-loved dress, which is clearly worth at least a tenner, and then someone has to pay postage on top, that postage is going to be £3 or £4 for a very basic postage. And that means the price of the garment to the buyer has now gone up to £14, £15, which is probably not within their budget. So it's really quite hard to make money. I've made space. I have sold not an enormous number of items, but I have sold things on eBay. So I've cleared space and made a few quid. And most of the stuff I'm selling on eBay is my own stuff. So I've had a big clothing clear out. I don't buy clothes. I put in a no buy on clothing back in 2015 when I first moved up to this region of the country, because I'd stopped doing like Saturday morning fast fashion hauls and things a long time ago, and I also hung on to my clothes. So I have lots of clothes, most of which I will never wear again because they're just not me anymore. Some of them are 15, 20 years old. And I've opted for wearing what I've got, only replacing things when they need to be replaced because they're a core item, like a winter coat, winter boots, things that I really, really need. But I'm also then buying them secondhand on eBay. I'm not buying new stuff anymore, unless it's an absolute thing that I need, like if I needed new underwear. I can't think of anything else I would buy brand new, to be honest with you. I think underwear's it. And at a push, if I saw the right underwear secondhand, like good bras are really expensive, and if I saw the right ones slightly used, maybe the packet just opened, tried on, and it's not been worn, I would consider that if it was going to save me money, because they're not cheap. And I'm a pretty low wearer of clothes, so things last me donkey's years. So I have no excuse for buying clothes for a very, very long time. So I siphoned out everything that I knew I was not going to wear again. And that's the stuff that's pretty much ended up on eBay. And a lot of it has gone to new homes, which is great. I created about half a rail. It doesn't look like it because I've been filling it up with other stuff. I'm really short of space at the moment. I really need things gone. And this is why I'm not doing too many of these chat and sews, is because I'm not making a lot of stuff at the moment, because the market is really bad at the moment. People are not buying. My revenue is on course to be down by 2/3 this year for my business. I'm filling that gap with other side hustles that I'm doing, which again is something that's over on my other channel. So don't really talk about it here because it's not relevant, really. So yeah, I'm kind of coasting along now, as in the same way that I did during the pandemic, when it was a case of, you know, you're toodling along, you're finding ways to fill the financial gap, and you're just hanging in there because that's what you do. So there are other financial things going on at the moment which I hope are going to resolve some issues and mean that I can keep running the business even though it's not making a lot of money, because don't forget, my business doesn't cost me anything to run apart from the website with Shopify and some Etsy fees. My business doesn't cost anything to run because I work from home. I run it from my spare room, so I have no rent on property. I don't have any staff. The energy I use just comes out of my household bill, and I'm really careful about what I use. So I'm, at the very least, I'm breaking even every month. So my business does not cost me anything to run. So I've kind of downgraded it back to a hobby for now, and I'm focusing on the other things that I can change. I think that at the very least things are going to stay the way they are in the economic world. I would say for at least another year, but I was reading in the news yesterday that rumblings are kicking off again between Ukraine and Russia in terms of, there was the grain treaty, and that's now ended, and this is also creating issues with the Russian gas pipelines, which means that energy prices could well go up again if Russia decides to cut everyone off, which it may well do. And with the grain treaty, it means that anything that's grain related, because we're still relying on them for grain, is also likely to push a lot of grocery prices up. So like bread, cereals, that sort of thing, which again is why I stockpile. And I also read that India's inflation rate is something like 40%, which is insane when you think about what our inflation rate is. How a country can survive on an inflation rate of 40%, I have no idea. And they are a country with a lot of financially pushed people. So India has now decided, in its attempts to get inflation down, to stop exporting a lot of its rice, which means rice prices and things like that will go up. So apparently people have been panic buying in the US, because you're all going to starve to death if you don't have a bag of rice, right? It's just nonsensical, because as soon as people panic buy, that creates the problem. If people just bought as normal, it wouldn't be. People are just so stupid and so selfish. They don't think about how those knock-on effects affect everything else. So panic buying in the US of rice will impact imports, it'll impact shop prices, because they'll just put the prices through the roof, because shops will realise people will pay anything for rice now, let's make lots of money out of rice. And of course that's going to have knock-on effects to us, because we're all so globally linked now that anything that happens a million miles away will inevitably trickle down to us as well. So I think that we're going to have more problems with groceries, we're going to have more problems with fuel, more problems with energy prices, which were just fractionally starting to go down. I don't think I'll notice the difference on the changes that happened in June, and the price cap I think is also going to be back for another review this month, August, and I can't see that making any difference to me. And I think that by winter, I think they predicted that by winter energy prices will go up again, and then they'll go back down again next spring, because of the way the price cap works, whatever it is. So we are in it for the long haul. I think that the current economic problems we're having now are going to trickle on for probably a couple of years. That's my feeling on it, based on the problems that we had back in 2008 and 2009. I remember that well, because I was just going to university in 2009, and I remember grabbing all my spare money, because I was getting a student loan back then, and I was getting maintenance grants, which were back then non-repayable. So I was financially tight, but it was doable. So I grabbed all my spare money and put it into locked ISAs for, I think it was 3 and 4 years, and the rates were like 4, 5, 6%, I think. So I locked all that away, and all that money kind of reappeared back in my bank accounts as I was leaving university, which enabled me to buy my car, because I hadn't had a car for 3 years since I've been at uni. I'd given up driving because I couldn't afford it, and I didn't really need it anyway. When I needed a car, I would hire one, and it worked out cheaper. So yeah, and the effects of that rumbled on for a while, and I think some effects of it have probably never really gone away. Excuse me, I'm just getting my coffee. Naughty today, second coffee of the day. And it's good. Anyway, so that's how I kind of feel about stuff at the moment. I'm not too depressed about the state of my business. I'm not going to lose my home over it. I am making inroads into other possible financial or forms of income. I'm still working on them, and again, that's over on my other channel, how that's going. And I'm playing a waiting game at the moment, waiting to hear on a couple of things which will help make a difference. In fact, 3 things. I'm waiting to find out what my tenancy renewal is going to be, how much my rent's going to go up. I'm waiting to hear about a medical study I've applied for, which if I get is going to pay me a nice amount of money, which will help towards that. And I've also applied for a part-time job, which I'm waiting to get the interview for. I'm waiting for them to let me know when they want to interview me. I'm through to interview stage, but it's not a big fancy fun job. It's completely unrelated to anything else that I do. It's just for the money, and because it's part-time, it'll fit in with allowing me to do everything else that I do. Because the last thing I want to do is have to go back to working in offices full-time. It'll mean commutes, it'll mean higher expenses, it'll mean me not being able to do any of the stuff that I do now financially of my business, because I'll just be too busy not being here, and I don't want that. I didn't work this hard to go back to square one again, because I worked in offices for 17 years and it took me a long time to get out of it. Once you get hooked to that income, it's very hard to then walk away from a job. You have to be a certain kind of brave person to walk away from work and have nothing. For me, it was going to university that got me out of the cycle of earning full-time income and being at work full-time. I was at uni for 3 years, I didn't work, I deliberately chose not to work, and I'd saved up to top up my maintenance grants to allow me to spend 3 years just focusing on my study. And then I started up my business with the help of a university startup scheme, which also invested some money back into my business, and that helped. And then I've done, part-time, bit part jobs since, sometimes just to break up the routine, sometimes because I needed a quick input of cash, and once or twice I've just fallen into jobs which just suited what I was doing at the time with my business. So I have also been gainfully employed at various times since I started my business 11 years ago. So it's not like it's an unusual thing or not something I could go back to. I just don't want to. And I think, as we've learnt this year, people are fed up of towing the line. They are fed up of working for the sake of working just to pay bills. This is no way to live life. Hand-to-mouth existence, just to pay bills, somebody else's bills usually. If you're renting, for instance, you're just paying to pay somebody else's profit margin, and you're not getting on and enjoying life. Now, my life's quite restricted at the moment because I'm on a tight budget. I'm frugal living now because I'm just making ends meet. That means I don't get out and do stuff, but I still think it's a better sacrifice than going back to an office, which not everyone will be happy with, but it works for me. So that's really the update. There's not really much else going on. How is everything going on with you? How is your business going? Are you still in business? Is business down? Are you seeing changes in behaviour? I'm always interested in these. And I love just watching small business owners like me just kind of ticking along and looking at the day-to-day challenges, because that's real life. I'm not interested in influencers. I'm not interested in people with very polished channels who are like, look amazing and wonderful and they're so upbeat and this is what you can do every day. I'm sorry, that's crap. Excuse my language. Life is not like that. And if you're constantly watching that and your life doesn't match it, you start to feel like you must be doing something wrong. And it's not that. It's that they're just weird and unusual, and real life doesn't work like that. This is real life. This is what really happens. We're sitting there at home, making stuff, trying to stay sane, drinking coffee, trying to not use gas and electric, trying to get clever in the kitchen to save money on grocery bills. And that's what everyone's doing. It really is. Unless you're one of that lucky top 10%, in which case you won't be watching me anyway. And I won't be watching you. So there we go. Anyway, I've got to cut some new strands for my latest coaster, which I've had on the go for about 2 weeks and I just haven't bothered to finish. I think it's probably appeared in at least one of the video. That's how it looks at the moment. I'd like to make it a bit bigger. It's sage green, damson purple, white, and I've now blended it to grey because I'm just using up bits that are left over. I'm not sure what else I'm going to put in because I'm running out of the colours and I don't want to put something completely different in. So I'm just going to carry until I run out, and then that'll be the size that it becomes. But it's a nice sized plate mat at the moment. This would be perfect for a good sized plant pot or something like that. So once this is done, this can go into the shop. It'll probably go on Etsy to start with. It'll go on my Shopify store as well. And I will do a close-up short for here on YouTube as well. And that makes me feel productive. So I shall carry on with that. I have some Etsy YouTube videos to watch. Cara Bunton's done her what's happening on Etsy this week that I want to watch, because it's always good to watch and reminds me that not putting all my eggs into the Etsy basket is such a good idea. Anyway, so that's that. I'm going to go off and do that. I hope you're well. I hope things are okay, and I hope this wasn't too boring for you. If it was boring, then you're probably best going elsewhere. But if you're watching, then you're probably already following my channel. Thank you for following. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. I've started putting these at the ends of all of my videos because liking and subscribing to the channel is free. Doesn't cost you anything. Hit subscribe and then my updates will appear in your feed magically, and then you can choose what you want to watch, and it means you're not having to scroll through loads of stuff. So like and subscribe. Join me next time when there'll be something else creative going on, because I post up shorts and things regularly to try and keep the momentum on the channel going. Lots of little product close-ups and things which you'd have to watch if you prefer the long form to the short form. Maybe you do both. I do bits of each depending on whose channel I'm following. I like the long form because I tend to do other things at the same time and have them on in the background often, because it's not really like sitting and watching a documentary. But I love seeing other people's lives. So if you have a channel that's a bit like mine, or it's very kind of here's a day in the life kind of thing, then let me know what your channel is, and I'm always interested in what goes on out there in the real world. So thank you for watching. Like and subscribe. It's free.